I can't remember when the talking started. I've tried, but there's a void in my memories from before the training. Here's what I do to recall, exactly as it happened. Banging. A trash can banging as it bounced along the hard concrete floor. I jolted awake in my bed. My bed. It was a standard issue army bunk with 2 short sheets and a scratchy green wool blanket. I rolled off it, trying to block out the noises. On your feet. Where's your rifle? Let's go, let's go. The screaming sergeant came into view. He was an imposing figure, tall and sturdy with the brown round campaign hat covering most of his face. Master Sergeant Rickson, his uniform told me. I was halfway to my feet when his strong hands gripped me, hauling me upright. My mind was processing his words too slowly to keep up. Rifle. Where's my rifle? My hands twitched as I racked my brain for the answer. Had I slept with it? Or was it with Miller on guard duty? Where was Miller? Rickson's blow caught me completely off guard and I collapsed to the ground. Where's your rifle, Baker? You had one object to secure. If you can't manage a weapon, how are you supposed to manage a platoon in combat? My foggy brain fixed on his words. Baker. I was Sergeant Baker. I struggled back to my feet. I don't know where my rifle is. Rickson got on my face, the edge of his hat digging into my forehead, and then he stepped back and brought a finger up to his collar, activating a radio. Memory loss is total, as predicted. We're moving to training now. He listened in for a response, then nodded and brought his hand back to his side. What the hell was he talking about? Rickson looked back to me, his black eyes revealing nothing. Downstairs, we've got training to complete. Now, Sergeant Baker. I followed him out the doorway and down the damp gray stairwell. It had the same layout as nearly every army barracks, so it was impossible to tell if I had been here before. I struggled to remember, but my head began to throb with pain. Rickson threw open a door and we were outside. The sun hadn't risen yet and he disappeared into the muggy darkness. I hesitated, and then I hurried to catch up with him. He was shaking hands with an older officer, somebody somewhat familiar. I peered at his name tape. Colonel Lennox. His grizzled face turned to me and I snapped off a salute. He returned the salute with a casual hand and then he turned back to Rickson. I'm not here, just an observer. Focus and respond to Master Sergeant Rickson's commands. You got it? Yes, sir. His voice was familiar to my ears, but I just couldn't place it. I could see the trail of memory leading back, underneath the block in my mind. Pain pulsed in my head again. Let's begin. He gestured to the ground behind him, towards a pile of scattered metal pieces. I recognized it immediately. It was a broken down M4 rifle. Rickson led me to the ground and tied a blindfold around my head. Here's your rifle, Baker. Assemble it from memory. Time starts now. I felt a twinge of panic and then my training kicked in. Muscle memory guided me as my fingers brushed against the components. Lower receiver, upper receiver, buffer spring, bolt. My hands moved faster and faster until it was complete. The cool metal felt right in my hands, and instinctively, I rubbed the metal above the selector switch. There was an etching in the surface. A B. Good, Rickson said. That's your rifle, remember? I nodded. There was still a gap in my memories, but I had remembered my rifle, the etching I had made. Rickson's hands grabbed my shoulders and dragged me a few feet further down on the concrete. Next up, you will assemble the M250 caliber machine gun. My head swam as I processed his words. The M2 was more complex than the M4 and there was something else to worry about. I remembered. I had never taken apart or reassembled a 50 cal before, let alone blindfolded. I can't, Sergeant. I don't have the experience. Rickson's voice echoed across the floor. Now! I flinched and I reached out with a hand. Backplate. My fingers moved over to the next component. Bolt. Don't forget the Jesus pin. I pulled my hand back, putting it on my forehead. I didn't know 50 cal components. Did I? Rickson's boot caught me in my ribcage, shooting pain up my side. "Execute, Baker, now!" I grabbed blindly for the components again, my hands moving more mechanically, faster and faster. A strange noise echoed through the area. Someone was clapping. "Nicely done, Sergeant," Rickson said. He murmured something else to the colonel, but I couldn't hear it. We continued on like this for most of the morning. I moved from weapon to weapon, piecing them together under a blindfold. The Mark 19 automatic grenade launcher, the M110 sniper rifle, the M240 machine gun, the M249 squad automatic weapon. I lost track of the total, but I couldn't shake the bad feeling in my head. Hands touched my face and I flinched. And then the blindfold was removed and I squinted at the sudden exposure of fluorescent lighting. The colonel had disappeared. Rickson was still behind me, looking back at the rows of assembled weapons on the concrete. He had a small smile on his face. "You did well today, Baker. Head up to the barracks and get some sleep. We're up at 04:30 tomorrow for language training." And then he walked away, leaving me alone in the concrete pad. I retraced my steps up the staircase and into the barracks. Someone had set out a plate of cafeteria food for me on my bunk. Meatloaf and mushy corn. I wolfed it down anyways and then went to the bathroom to wash up. The tile floor was spotless and the area reeked of army-grade bleach. The lighting was cranked up to an uncomfortable glare, making it hard for me to focus. I washed my hands in the sink and then I caught my reflection in the mirror. Bleary, bloodshot eyes stared back at me. I had deep, dark grooves under my eyes and my face was pale and clammy. I looked like hell. But then I returned to my bunk, answering the call of exhaustion. Seemingly minutes later, Rickson woke me up with a violent shake. I lurched out of bed and began putting on my uniform again. Once dressed, Rickson led me downstairs and into a classroom. The colonel was standing in the corner of the room, writing notes onto a clipboard. There were stacks of paper laid out across the tables in the room. I saw Chinese, Russian, and dozens of different languages on the paper. Rickson started me with Arabic. I could see that the papers were mostly news articles. He pointed me to a pen and a notebook of empty paper and told me to start translating. But again, I hesitated and then a flash of pain seized my brain. I grasped the pen, hand shaking, and I began to write. Someone or something was narrating the translation in my mind. My head pounded as the words began to fill the pages of the notebook. Rickson's hand finally stopped mine and I blinked. I had translated 14 pages. He nodded at the colonel and then he moved me to a different seat. This stack of papers was Chinese. "Sergeant Rickson, I don't know Chinese." He ignored me and he pointed at the pen and the paper. I cried out as the pain radiated from my head. I tried to grab the pen. A voice burst into my head, chattering in Chinese. Another one layered over it, frantically speaking a translation to English. The characters on the page ran together in a blur and I felt a violent wave of nausea. I heard Rickson screaming, but it came through faintly like I was underwater. I registered the colonel writing notes in the corner. And then darkness. I came to a minute later. I was lying flat on the floor in a pool of my own vomit. Rickson and a medic were crouched over me. Slowly, my hearing recovered and I realized they were talking to me. "Can you hear us? Are you okay?" Their voices broke through my searing headache. I tried to form words, but they came out fragmented and broken. Panic rose in my chest as I kept trying and failing to speak. Rickson placed a hand on my chest, holding me down. "Relax, just relax. We're gonna take you back upstairs to rest." And I nodded. The colonel was still taking notes, and he looked at me with an odd expression, both concern and disappointment. I faded out again and I woke up in my bed. "Escape," a voice said. "Choke out the guard and make it downstairs." I grabbed my knees and I huddled on my bunk, teeth chattering. Goosebumps broke across my skin as I fought the voice in my head. Or was it multiple voices? Before I realized it, I was on my feet and I was halfway to the door. "Call for water," it said. I opened the door and the guard opposite whirled to face me. "Water, I need water," I rasped. He turned to make a radio call and then I grabbed him. My bicep wrapped around his neck and I squeezed, compressing the arteries. He was out in seconds. Good. Now hurry, the voice told me. I raced down the stairwell and cautiously opened the door, peeking out into the company area. I was about to sprint across when the voice stopped me. Wait. I held back and I saw a flashlight shine across the concrete. Another guard was making rounds and I waited for him to pass, heart racing. When he turned the corner, I made my move. I stalked across the concrete, moving as quietly as possible. I got to the door on the far side, near the language training classroom. I pushed open the door with a creak and I slipped inside. Look for the office. The colonel's office, it told me. I moved through the corridor and I found it at the end of the hallway. I eased the door open and I closed it behind me. The office was dimly lit. I moved to his heavy wooden desk and I saw the clipboard on top. The cover sheet read, Memory Fusion Project, Sergeant Baker. What the fuck did that mean? I flipped through the other pages, medical records, x-rays, diagnostic reports, mental health assessments, all about me. I found the colonel's notes from the classroom. Subject indicates memory of previously unknown languages, Arabic translation, complete. Chinese translation, presented a mental breakdown. Must check record to see if conflicting memories were uploaded into the subject. Are you here? Who are you? I asked myself. It sounded insane, but I knew there was someone up there, but I got no response. And then Rickson burst through the door, leveling a handgun at me. Drop it. What is this? What did you do to me? He shook his head, a faint hint of sadness in his eyes. Drop the documents, Baker. Kill him, it told me. Escape. I took a step forward. Rickson pulled the trigger and a round erupted from the pistol into my chest. I braced for the pain, but I only felt a small twinge. I looked down and I saw a dart sticking out of my skin. Tranquilizer, a voice warned me. I took another step and then I stumbled to the floor. Rickson dragged me away as I faded into black. My hands couldn't move. I tugged when I regained consciousness against the fabric. Something rough. I glanced to the side and I saw that they had me restrained in my bunk. I struggled again to test the material and it was too strong to rip. And then I saw Rickson standing over me, frowning. You're awake. I tried to calm myself, to act normally. What did you do to me? He sighed. It's a lot to take in. Try to understand I'm not mad. I'm not trying to hurt anyone. I didn't kill the guard last night for a reason. I just need to know about this experiment, these tests, so I can do better for you. That's good, Baker. I'll bring the colonel in. We can all talk before the next round of tests. Okay? Yes. Will you take these restraints off of me now? I'll ask the colonel. It's not my call. He disappeared into the hallway. You have to kill them, the voice said. It's the only way. Shut up! Get out of my head! Rickson entered a minute later with Lennox in tow. He wore a plastic smile. Hey son, I see we had a bit of an adventure last night, I gave a fake smile back. Just testing out my new capabilities, sir. I was talking to Sergeant Rickson. I think the sickness came from the confusion. Too much for the brain to try and reconcile. We think that if you tell me everything that happened, then I'll be better. I'll do better. The colonel nodded. So he says, it's an interesting proposition. Please, and can you release my restraints? I'm not a threat to you. I fought to remember our connection and our relationship. I kept catching a glimmer of him with a younger face, handing me a challenge coin. I ran with it. I remember when you awarded me that coin, sir. A wave of shock rippled across his face and then disappeared. Yes, Baker, that was a long time ago. He turned to Rickson and gestured for him to untie me. He did, and I sat up, slowly so not to alarm them. I rubbed my wrist to return circulation. The colonel sat before me. Son, you volunteered for a project. We implanted some technical knowledge and memories into your brain to enhance your knowledge and capabilities. We spend so much time and money on developing lessons learned from past wars and experiences. What better way to keep those alive than to implant them directly into our leaders? We started slowly with 1 or 2 memories from an individual. I tried to keep up with his words. How long have I been here? Lennox frowned. 2 years. There are some side effects with the procedure, and you lose some short-term memory as more concepts are given to you. Some mornings you wake up with full cognition, and other days we're starting over at square one. A panicked voice rose in my mind. There were others. They'll kill us too. You have to escape. Shut up, shut up. He'll hear us. I blinked, clearing away the unwanted voices. Lennox's eyes bored into mine, and I feared he saw right through me. How much is left? Training before I deploy. Rickson and Lennox exchanged glances. It's hard to say, Lennox said. We keep ramping up the memories and seeing excellent results, but there are periodic setbacks like we had in the language training. Maybe a month or so? No time, escape. Shut up. Okay, sir, when can I start the training again? That's a spirit, he said with a grin. Rest up today and maybe we'll resume tomorrow. I'll let you and Rickson hash that one out. And then he stood up and he turned to leave. I beckoned Rickson closer to whisper something in his ear. Now! I reacted instinctively, lashing out with a fist and crushing his windpipe. His hands reached up to grab the broken airway and I seized the pistol from his belt. Lennox turned around, but it was too late and I shot him with the tranquilizer. He sagged to his knees. You won't escape. None of the others have. He slurred the rest of his words and he slumped to the ground. What did he mean? Lies, a voice hissed. Lies, escape now. I spared a final glance for the unconscious men and I fled the compound to my current hiding spot on the base. This recorded message is for anyone who can help. If anyone out there receives this message, I am in the woods northeast of the training compound. I'm afraid to say exactly where, but come to the woods and I'll find you. Send help quickly. I hear them coming.